Sneakers and Cleats, the podcast. Welcome back to the Sneakers and Cleats podcast. This is Thursday, April 4th, episode 90. Chuck McTinnick, Matt Roy on tap to talk all things sports. We got a lot going on today. Chuck, how are you?
Doing great, Matthew. How are you doing?
I am wonderful. How's your lunch?
It was great until we had to do a podcast, so I have to put it aside for now. That's all right. It'll be there when we're done.
I've seen you always go to Zito's right here, right by the station, and I still have the only time I've ever eaten there is when you gave me half of your Philly the other day, and it was great.
That's pretty much everything over there. So yes, you need to get over there before you're going to have that fear of missing out.
Oh, I'll go eventually. I'm going to be here for a while. So
there you go.
So we got a lot going on today. We're going to talk the highest watched women's basketball game, actually highest watched college basketball game on ESPN's networks ever, but highest watched women's basketball game of all time. We'll talk Caitlyn Clark and Iowa against LSU, kind of how they're changing the face of women's basketball. We'll get into the Texans making a huge move, trading for Stefon Diggs, how that impacts the AFC South and the AFC picture as a whole. Plus, the Cowboys made a move. Not the one we wanted, but or anybody wanted, but you know, they made a move. They signed Chuma Edoga. Plus, Derrick Henry had some interesting comments about his non-courtship of the Cowboys. So we'll get into all that. But first, as always, we start with the number game. Fun fact: there is no NFL player that was made famous for wearing the number 90 that is in the Hall of Fame in the NFL.
Really?
Not until Julius Peppers goes in here in a little bit.
That would be a very good place to start with the number 90, right? And I was so glad when he joined my team. He was worth every nickel too, and that was late in his career.
Yeah, I mean, he was 56 with the Packers. When he was with the Panthers, when he was with the Bears, he was 90, 159 and a half career sacks. So I mean, it's pretty. I think that's what, fourth all time, something like that, behind Bruce Smith and Reggie White. Actually, he might be second. Might be third. I mean, I don't know, something like that. But he's obviously someone that comes to mind automatically. TJ Watt also number 90. He's probably the one that comes to mind now.
Okay.
TJ Watt and then DeMarcus Lawrence. DeMarcus Lawrence. Would you say that DeMarcus Lawrence, taking Micah out of it because Micah's kind of the hybrid aspect of it? Do you think DeMarcus Lawrence is the best defensive player that the Cowboys have had since DeMarcus Ware?
You know, you kind of ambushed me with that one, so
yeah,
I have to think about it. But
just came to my head.
Off the top of my head, maybe. Really good, and he sure is a treat when you crack a microphone in front of him. That's all I know. So.
Yeah, he is. I was just thinking about it. It's like they've had a lot of good defensive players, not great ones. DeMarcus Lawrence, though, was probably the best one, maybe since Sean Lee. I know Sean Lee was really good for a couple of years, but his injury history, he's kind of like the Leighton Vander Esch aspect of it.
Yeah, and to think, too, with D-Law lately, you know, being as banged up as he's been and playing through it and still producing, yeah, he's been really good.
Yeah, he's been good to have on the other side. His production, like the numbers haven't been there, but he opens so much up for Micah, so it's helpful in that aspect. Not a lot of 90s in the Major League Baseball or in the NBA, but the Spurs used to have a 90. Drew Gooden played for half a season for the Spurs in 2009.
Wow, I'd forgotten about that.
He played for 11 seasons with the number 90, but he played for the Spurs. Wasn't Drew Gooden the one that had the patch of hair on the back of his head?
He did, yes.
Where he wore the headband and all he had was the patch of hair
well, he
had
various looks through the years, but yes.
And then
good player.
Another thing that I instantly think of when I think of 90, the number 90, is 1990. The most historic and biggest upset in the history of boxing. Mike Tyson losing to Buster Douglas I think it was February 19th of 1990.
I thought you were going to say in the history of baseball, because the Reds beating that A's team in the 90 World Series was
that as well.
Swept them. That was really odd too.
That as well. But I mean, Mike Tyson losing to Buster Douglas is like the shot heard around the world. Like 37-0, 33.
Oh yeah.
33 wins by knockout, and you lose to Buster Douglas in the 10th round. And I think the lasting image is him scrambling around on the mat looking for his mouthpiece to try and get up, and it's a standing 10 count. He's done. I just can't believe that he won 42-1 odds. 42-1 odds.
That was back in the day when those fights were on closed circuit, and at my old place that I used to work, we used to get the closed circuit, so there would be 20 or 30 people in this smaller room than this watching these boxing matches, these Mike Tyson boxing matches back in the day. It was a very odd way to get your information.
It was probably warmer in those rooms than it is in this one.
Yes.
It's going to turn my coffee into iced coffee. Say, what's it in here right now? 64 now, Luis? 64. All right. Well, that's not that bad, but
Yeah.
I think it's colder than that.
It is. I think it says 59 where Bob is. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's just put the room right next to my heart. It'll be cold. But yeah, that obviously instantly comes to mind when you think of 1990. Mike Tyson, the biggest upset in boxing history, 42-1 underdog, the biggest underdog biggest upset in boxing history. So other things that happened in 1990, we can just gloss right over the Super Bowl. 55-10, the 49ers beat the Broncos. Joe Montana, Super Bowl MVP, and the regular season MVP in the season that followed. I believe the Broncos even though the Broncos have won 3 Super Bowls, they've been to 7. They have the worst point differential in Super Bowls of any team in NFL history. Even though they've been to 7 and won 3, they've lost. I think it was 39-20, 55-10, 43-8, and then there was one other one that I can't remember. I think it was to the Redskins. But isn't that staggering? It's really bad. Imagine being a fan of that crappy team.
It's not only that. If you lose by 1 or 100, it doesn't matter. You lose, right? So if you're going to lose, you may as well lose like that.
I don't know.
I'd rather lose like that than, a guy throwing an interception in the end zone while you're on the 1 yard line.
Okay, that's a good question. I think the year after this is the Scott Norwood is the Scott Norwood kick. I think I could be wrong. There might be one Super Bowl in between. But would you rather lose 55-10, or would you rather lose because your kicker's kick goes wide right?
Yeah, 55-10.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Yep. Because you're going to lose. Like if you know that the outcome is you're going to lose, yes, I'd rather lose by a lot.
Well, I mean, you never know the outcome.
I'd rather know that I was never in the game, not that I had a chance to win it at the end.
Well, the other thing I have on here in 1990, the Reds sweep the A's in the World Series. That was what you mentioned earlier. So Why was that so shocking? I don't remember that A's team.
Well, because that A's team was stacked top to bottom, and that Reds team was a bit of an underdog. In fact, one of the nasty boys, Norm Charlton, the pride of Madison High School, was on that Reds team. And, that bullpen was elite that the Reds had that year. Eric Davis got hot. So did, Eric Davis got hurt. Billy Hatcher carried that team, hitting like 750 in that postseason or something stupid. And they steamrolled the A's when literally nobody saw it coming.
Wow.
So, but that was cool. Norm got a World Series ring off that year.
Absolutely. And now you have the A's that are leaving their hometown by choice and going to play in a 10,000-seat AAA stadium for no good reason.
Right? I mean, so again, this just shows you where the state of baseball is when you're only as good as the teams that are at the bottom of the feed, right? So if you have a team like Oakland that's now going to have to play somewhere else for 3 years before they can even get to Vegas, are they even going to ever go to Vegas at this point? That's my question.
Well, they just closed down Tropicana. So, things are in motion. But, well, if we have time, we'll get to that at the end of this. But a lot of other things to get to. Let's start with, the Bad Boys Pistons, obviously, in 1990, beat the Blazers 4-1, win the second consecutive finals. UNLV won the men's national championship and the Valero Texas Open. Mark O'Meara won that year in 1990.
Oh, nice.
So, I always think of Mark O'Meara in a book I read about Tiger. Those two are very, very close, Mark O'Meara and Tiger Woods. So that's how I always think of him. Like, yes, he was a former golfer, but he's also one of Tiger's best friends, and that's how I always think of Mark O'Meara. So let's get to some content here. So Iowa and LSU's Elite 8 matchup set a viewership record with 12.2 million viewers on a Monday night.
Yeah,
a Monday evening. And 12.3 or 2 million people tuned in to see this, not even a finals matchup, not even a Final Four matchup, an Elite 8 matchup, which was the championship, a rematch of last year's championship between Angel Reese and LSU and Caitlyn Clark and Iowa. What do you think that says about, one, the state of women's game? Do you think that number comes more from Caitlyn Clark's star power, the things that are happening with Kim Mulkey, which we won't get into right now, but you obviously have that piece that has been written about Kim Mulkey.
2 pieces.
Multiple pieces written about Kim Mulkey.
That came out at the same time on both sides of the coast, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Opposite sides of the coast.
Yes. You have the stuff that's going on with Kim Mulkey. I think all of that kind of fed the beast, but what do you think that says about the state of the game?
I think you're right. I think it's the story that is so nuanced and like all of the worlds converged, right? You have Caitlyn Clark, who's getting a lot of publicity aptly so, for her ability to score the basketball. And then you've got the rematch against the team that did the hand gestures, and then the players that had been vilified, the coach that had been vilified. And it was, the way the narrative kind of went from, the white hats against the black hats, or the good guys against the bad guys, however you want to pose this. I don't like doing this because it's, we're talking about college kids here. I don't think anybody's the bad guy here. So you have all these things, though, that created a lot of interest. And man, when you were telling me about those numbers, it was like,
It's staggering.
it really, really is. I mean, good on that. I mean, the game was competitive. And again, it's the storylines. If it's just a game, do we care? No, it's the soap opera behind the scenes too that sometimes leads to this kind of viewership for a game.
It is. And I think a lot of things went into it. One, it was hyped up so much because of last year when you have the Angel Reese pointing at her ring finger right in front of Caitlyn Clark's face, and you have that kind of combative narrative that's been built by the media. You have a lot of things that went into it. Plus, I know when you say that these are college kids and stuff, I think Caitlyn Clark is making over $1 million. Angel Reese is making millions of dollars. Like, at this point, this is professional sports. But that's a conversation for another day. I think that when you look at the interest that the women's game is generating right now, it's of the equivalent of, or close, comparable to, the kind of interest that the Dream Team had for the NBA in 1992. When they went to the Olympics, they expanded the game globally. I think what you're seeing from Caitlyn Clark and Angel Reese, mainly Caitlyn Clark, just because of how big of a name she really is, I think that they're going to have the same impact on the women's college game and on the WNBA game that the Dream Team had in 1992 in the Olympics, because of the reach, because of the likability of them, because of the swag that they have, because of the NIL money, the commercials that they're in, the visibility. I think all of those factors go into creating something that I think even Pat Summitt in her wildest dreams maybe couldn't have imagined happening this soon.
You might be right. I mean, the fact that game did what it did, and again, there's just so many elements to this. And then now, it seems like it's, you've got social media pushing this, you've got the TV pushing it, you've got the newspapers pushing it, the radio, everybody's pushing it and illuminating what's going on. And again, I think they're backing it up by the way they play too. It's not just something that, is being rammed down your throat as a marketing campaign. I mean, they're delivering the goods too, and in all facets, not just on the floor, but off it as well.
What does it say about the game, the state of basketball, the state of women's basketball, though? Because 40 years ago, this wouldn't have even been imaginable. I think the first women's NCAA tournament was 1982. You had Pat Summitt a long time ago who was washing her own players' jerseys so they could play the next day. They were sleeping on floors of gyms and sleeping bags. And then now you have this, where a women's Elite Eight game was the most watched college basketball game, either gender, on ESPN's networks. I know that they don't have a lot of the Final Four stuff and whatnot, so you can't really compare apples to apples, but still, that's a staggering thing to say, from saying that a women's college game was the most watched game on the worldwide leader of sports.
Right. I mean, and not only that, you were breaking down the numbers in terms of other sporting events.
Yeah, and they, just to go to that point, they beat the NBA, they beat the ML, they beat the NBA Finals, they beat the World Series games, they beat the Peach Bowl, the Rose Bowl, a lot of other bowl games last year. So,
I mean, what more needs to be said?
Do you think that it'll go, that some of the interest will go by the wayside when Caitlyn Clark leaves?
I don't know. That's, there's always that concern, like when Michael leaves, would there be a guy behind him? Well, there was. There usually seems like there's somebody to fill the void somewhere. But, there's a lot of good players in the league. I mean, USC's got 2 or 3 of them, one of our own going out there too. So, maybe it's not one person that kind of galvanizes the whole everything. It's a team and I wouldn't be a bit surprised if it's USC with the talent that they have out there and the talent that's coming.
I think that good thing that's come out of NIL, and we've talked a lot about this. I talked about this with Zach and Anthony and Don and all of them, is one good thing that's come out of NIL is that you now have players that are celebrities. And I think that's one thing that baseball has done poorly, is marketed their celebrities, marketed their best players poorly. I think that now that NIL is a thing and players can accept money and go on commercials, and you see Caitlyn Clark going on Subway commercials with Steph Curry and, doing all these things. I think that's one good thing that NIL has done, especially for the women's game, is that you now have these stars, and with everything that comes with star power comes visibility, comes eyeballs. And so when you have those stars in your given sport, it brings more people to it.
Yeah, I think baseball's problem is that there's a lot of pushback historically from players that don't want to be singled out as individuals because it's a team sport. And that's pretty much ingrained in the sport. But you're right. I mean, in terms of how things get pushed nowadays, you have to kind of build the stars and then the teams follow.
You do. And I think that's one thing that, just to go off on a quick baseball tangent, that's one thing that's hurt baseball is that Mike Trout is one of the best players of all time, not just my generation, but of all time. And he'll go down, he'll be a first ballot Hall of Famer. It's an argument that he can be a top 5 player in the history of baseball. But no one's ever going to imagine that because he hasn't been marketed very well. He does some commercials, but it's not like the Shohei Ohtani effect. You know what I mean? It's just he's that low-key superstar.
Right. But I mean, Shohei might be the only one that's got those kind of endorsements going right now, which also, again, speaks to baseball as a whole, that most players don't want that kind of shine.
Last thing on the women's game real quick. Angel Reese caught a lot of flack last year for being this demonstrative player. And she talks a lot of shit, just for lack of a better term. Sorry, Bob.
Bob's got work to do now.
No, I mean, I don't know. He might need to, not click for children on the YouTube page now, but I'll fix it when editing. Anyway, she talks a lot of crap. She does the "you can't see me" thing in front of Caitlyn Clark's face. She's very boisterous and loud on the court. But her coaches will tell you that she's very internal. She keeps to herself, kind of. She's motivational with her team, but she doesn't really go out. And she's been completely torn down over the last year. She said it afterwards that she's been sexualized. She's gotten death threats. She's gotten all these things. If anybody is out there doing those things, like, these are college kids.
Right.
She's a 21-year-old college kid. Like, no matter how much money she's making for playing in college, it doesn't matter. She is a college athlete.
Right.
And if you're out there like sending death threats to a college athlete, like, you're just the scum of the earth.
Right.
Like, that's just what you are.
Well, it always speaks to where those people are coming from and what's going on in their life. But I'm with you. I've heard a lot of commentary on this particular topic that Angel Reese can't have it both ways. She can't be doing the hand gestures and taunting of the other team. But I'll bet you $5 if we were to go back in time, she wouldn't have done the things that she did, knowing that this was going to be the stuff that was going to come with it, right? It was a hard lesson for her to learn that if you're going to do this kind of stuff and taunt, then other people are going to taunt you. And, I'm just grateful that, something that occurred in a public place like that isn't something that you and I have to absorb. It's like, you have no idea what that kid's having to deal with.
Absolutely.
After, and again, how many times have we seen that on a playground or any walk of life where a kid will do that? And, again, maybe you shouldn't do that. Who am I to judge?
Yeah.
But again, the punishment doesn't always fit the crime, if that makes any sense.
I think that makes total sense. And I think that, putting it to this lens, this is 2 white men talking about this. We will never understand the kind of vitriol that comes with just being a young black female in general, let alone the boisterous, loud, taunting individual that she is on the court, as opposed to who she is off the court. And so it's kind of hard to even talk about it from our sense, or at least for me. I don't want to speak for you. It's hard to talk about it for me, at least a little bit, just because I can't put myself in her shoes. I've never been there. But I just can't imagine being the kind of person that would, to anybody, reach out to them and say, you deserve to die. That's your family, blah, blah, blah.
Right. You can't, right. Nobody's saying that we could walk in her shoes, but you can empathize with the fact that what happens if you are getting a death threat or you're getting, just massacred on social media with some of the vitriol and some of the evil things that people say. But again, I guarantee you, if she knew what was going to happen, she wouldn't have done what she did in the moment. And that's why you could tell, her mea culpa the other day about, the stuff that I've had to deal with and all that. You can have some empathy for it. I certainly do.
I don't know if that's necessarily true. I think that if she had to do it again, she would have, because it did come to a lot of good things. I don't know her at all. So
No,
I mean,
you can win without taunting. What I'm saying is that because of that gesture towards another team or another individual, there's been a lot of hate and a lot of pushback coming her way. I mean, it's certainly not worth the price of having to deal with that, other than just win the game, take your trophy and go home.
I think the comment that stuck with everybody when she was talking was, "I haven't had peace since we won the national championship." And I was just like, how crappy does that have to be, to where the culmination of everything you've worked for in your whole life was also one of the worst moments of your life? Like, that has to be such a bad feeling. But let's get on to a couple of other things here. So Texans trading for Stefon Diggs. The Texans are, is their owner Jerry Jones? Because I think they're all in, not the Cowboys. They have signed Danielle Hunter. They've signed Joe Mixon. They've signed now traded for Stefon Diggs. They have gone all in around their rookie quarterback, and they are going to be making some noise next year in the playoff.
I don't think there's any question, but I mean, I don't know. It's, again, we're comparing apples and oranges every time this topic comes up, and I saw it on Twitter, and people that I respect, it's like, look, they're all in, but the Cowboys aren't. It's the Cowboys are hamstrung with the contracts that they have. End of story. It'd be nice if they could go out and do some of these deals, but at some point, you have to know that you either going to have to sign CD and Micah, and then you would think that Dak's also in that equation. To what degree, I don't know, but they don't have the cap space. They don't have the picks. They don't have all the stuff that the Texans have by virtue of the Texans sucking for 3 or 4 years.
Well, let's look at it through the Texans lens. What is the ceiling for the Texans next year with the moves that they have made, the players that they have right now as we sit here today?
As we sit here today, I mean, they're in damn good shape. I mean, this is a team that went 2 rounds deep last year that had, and we talked about this last year at the time, they led the league in guys injured. So they not only achieved with guys out, now they're getting healthy and making these moves, and they've got the draft. And again, those 2 picks that they gave up to get Diggs, that's next year. So, they're in a really, really good spot, you have to believe.
And how they built their team is through the offensive line, too. Their offensive line was the most injured unit that they had last year. Besides their receiving core, Tank Dell obviously got that gruesome injury. But Titus Howard went down for a few weeks. Laramie Tunsil went down for a while. Like, they kind of were that attrition team last year, besides the Ravens, who seem to always be the attrition kind of team. And Bob knows better than most how
the Browns did very,
how
very
good
well
that
too.
team is.
The Browns were right up there, but the Texans were number 1.
Hey, now, if I was yesterday, I was ranking like as of right now before the draft where all the AFC teams stand. I seriously think that Houston is the second best team in the AFC right now.
That's not like off the wall. I think that's actually accurate. They could very well be the second best team in the AFC. Who else is it? The Chiefs, obviously. We're just going to put the Chiefs at number 1. We'll just call it the Chiefs number 1 until they're proven otherwise.
It depends on the day, right? I mean, it's
the
like
Ravens. Who's better right now, the Ravens or the Texans?
Well,
with the moves that you've seen made. I mean, who would you want?
The Ravens are one of those teams, though, that I would. Again, they're one of those teams that's just, you're going to get into a fist fight with them. You're not going to out tough them, but again, I mean, you're talking about making a leap from nothing to what they did this year. What are they going to do now?
Well, they went from 2-14 to 10-7. Now, the next leap is the hardest. I mean, you'll hear that from coaches up and down the street. It's the leap from year 1 to year 2 is it's considerable.
Yeah, now you have to play the playoff schedule.
You have to play the one seed schedule. Yeah,
so
first place.
Yeah, now you're talking about playing better teams more often, and what is that going to do to your attrition? But again, regardless, they've proven that even if they get beat up, they're going to be okay as long as the quarterback's still standing.
Yeah, the team is legitimately top 3 team in the AFC right now, just on paper. I mean, you have to see how all the pieces come together. But the thing that comes out of this is that the Bills are trading away their number 1 receiver, someone who has caught more balls over the last 4 years in Buffalo than anybody else in the league. And it seems like the Bills on the other side of this, while the Texans have gotten much better, the Bills have kind of missed their window. They missed the cheap years of Josh Allen. His salary kicks in this year goes all the way up to $47 million. They're trying to clear cap space now. They've missed this window of this iteration of the Bills.
It sure seems like that. They had their chance and they've blown it too many times. It sure seems like that, but we'll see. I mean, it's one player, there's only one ball, and maybe they can replace that either through the draft or making some sort of shrewd move. They've done a very good job of being competitive over the last decade or so.
They have, and this conversation could be completely different in about a month after the draft. I mean, right now their number one receiver is Khalil Shakir. If they draft Xavier Worthy or A.D. Mitchell or something like that, then obviously it's a different conversation we're having. But the Bills are going to have to go through what, every team goes through when you have a quarterback on a rookie deal. Okay, now the money's going here. Where else can we put the rest of the money? And that's the thing that the Cowboys are going
100%.
through. It's the things that the Dolphins are going to have to go through. It's the things that the Chiefs have gone through. The Russell Wilson Seahawks went through when Russ was on his 3rd-round contract. Every team has to go through this. Every team that drafts a good quarterback, has a young quarterback that you're going to build around, does the same thing. You try and win in his rookie deal, and if you don't do it, then you have to blow it up and pay the quarterback and then figure the rest out later.
I know it's a very difficult thing going forward. And that's why, even like Packer fans, it's like, oh, we're set up. It's like, you don't know. You don't know if you're set up or not. You had a chance. You were one drive away from going to the Super Bowl. And then who knows what would have happened there. You just don't know year to year.
Quick thing with the Packers is their quarterback situation is even weirder because you have the quarterback that is not on his rookie. He's still on his rookie deal, but he didn't play until his 3rd year.
Right.
So now you're that much closer to having to pay him. So that's kind of sucks for the Packers.
I know it. But again, it's a good problem to have. But who doesn't like Jordan Love? But do you like him at Dak Prescott money?
Do you love him, though?
I don't know.
Do you love Jordan Love?
How can you not love Jordan Love?
It's all love. Bob, any comments before we move on to Derrick Henry?
Well, I only thing I was, AFC talk, because that's all I care about is
Browns fan, Bob Gamber, by the way.
I just wondered, do you guys think the Bengals are going to have a comeback year this year?
I would think so. I mean, that quarterback's too damn good.
I would, but
their defense is really bad.
If you're ranking my confidence level of every quarterback in the NFL, I would put Joe Burrow at 2, right behind Patrick Mahomes. Joe Burrow is if he's healthy, they always have a chance.
And he started the season nicked, Yeah,
there's a lot of moving parts. He was never healthy last year.
But I don't know. It's the Bengals, so you never know how quickly it's going to become the Bungles again. So
I think the Bengals are going to be really good. I think the whole AFC North is going to be just a dogfight. There's literally a dogfight every single week, no matter who it is.
Yeah, we'll see. Have to see how this Pittsburgh experiment goes.
Yeah, Pittsburgh's going to be something.
They always overperform though. They
do. I mean, they haven't had a losing season since Mike Tomlin's been there. So I mean,
amazing.
It's ridiculous. All right, last thing real quick on the way out, since we all are getting out of here a little early today. Derrick Henry made some interesting comments about the Cowboys. He said that it would have been a match made in heaven. I'll paraphrase for him. He said would have been a match made in heaven, but they never called him, never offered him. I know, not surprised by that.
No, but I mean, it would have been from a fan's perspective, sure, it would have been great for them to go all in and add the guy. It's just, I don't know where they're going to get all this money to do all the things that they want to do. Let's wait and see what happens through the draft. And then let's see who they're able to get after the draft as well. I mean, again, I don't know that things have gone completely according to plan. We don't know that they haven't, but this is a team that still won 13 games last year, the year before, and the year after.
Are the Cowboys a better team right now than they were on January 12th?
I don't think so.
Well, then how are fans expected to believe in this roster when you have people like Derrick Henry, who said, I would have loved to go to Dallas. It would have been a match made in heaven running behind that offensive line, yada, yada, yada. They didn't even give him a call.
I know, but
how are fans supposed to believe in that?
Because if you have a finite number of dollars and you realize that you've got to have better defensive linemen, better linebackers, maybe a better receiver or two, maybe where you take the hit is we draft a running back and we bring back Zeke on the cheap.
Nobody's paying for running backs anymore.
Saquon Barkley just made $12 million.
Baltimore overpaid him. There's no way that's going to pay off for Baltimore. You go and you get a cheap running back. That's
the Baltimore deal is 2 years for $20 million, right? Something like that. It's $10 million for the best running back of our generation.
$8 million a year, and his best days are past. I'll bet you we'll see an off season from him.
This is a Browns fan talking about the Ravens, so I'm just saying.
I mean,
take that with a grain of salt.
Then they'll weigh what they have, and it's like, McCarthy wants to run the ball. Well, that didn't work out very well last year, so they threw the ball, and they threw the ball a lot, and they put up a lot of big numbers, Dak included, and CD included. So they're going to get what they get, and then they're going to tailor what they have around the elements that are on the roster, and then we'll see what ends up going. But
The
again, I
last
think
thing they can do
they're
is
going to go
overpay
on the
for a
cheap
running
with the
back.
running back.
The Derrick Henry comments show me one thing. Show me that players want to come to Dallas, but Dallas has put themselves in such a crappy situation that they can't take those players on.
Well, they're in a crappy situation. I would agree with the cap, but it's still a pretty good roster.
Okay, their over-under on wins is 10.5. As we sit here today, over or under 10.5 wins. They've won 12, the last 3 years?
Yeah. I don't know. I think Bob's given the thumbs up. I mean, why
Over.
not? I mean, until proven otherwise, right? I mean, well, I think we've sit here and moaned before during the offseason that they're not doing enough, or they haven't signed whoever, or whoop-de-doo, they went and got this guy, never heard of him. Yeah, why not? I'll say 11.
As we sit here right now, the Cowboys are an 8-win team. They've lost so many players. They've gotten so much worse. Their roster has gotten so much worse this offseason. As we sit here right now, this is an 8 or 9-win team. They might get better. The draft is coming up. You never know what's going to happen. They could trade back. They could trade up. They could sign free agents off the scrap pile. You never know. But as we sit here right now, I think they're an 8-9-win team.
Okay, that's fair.
I
mean, I
we
can't
still
say you're wrong.
got a long way till September.
Right. I know. Thankfully, I know. Oh, I'm fired up. We got the draft. We got OTAs, mini camps. This is my favorite time of the year. Everything's low key. There's no. Everybody's a Super Bowl team.
Acquisition season.
Yeah.
All right, that's all we got for today on the
Taking
Senior
the
Cleats podcast. Remember to download, rate, review, subscribe, give us a 5-star rating. Tell a friend, tell an enemy. A couple of housekeeping things on the way out. So if anyone's listening right now, we are not going to have a podcast on Monday. It is Solar Eclipse Day. Everyone get outside, enjoy your solar eclipse. Get some glasses. Don't go blind, please. Even though we might look better if you're blind. So
you can't podcast without the sun.
Yeah, we can't podcast without the sun. That 4-minute stretch. So we're not going to have a podcast on Monday. I will be out of town for the next 2 podcasts. I'll be going to Vegas and then to Nashville. So hopefully I don't post anything on my social media.
No, hopefully
feeds.
you do. We all need entertainment on this end.
If I post anything from Vegas, I don't think that Bob's going to really appreciate it. And then so Zach will be hosting next Thursday, and Zach will be hosting that Monday afterwards. I'll be back on April 18th. And really quick on the way out, happy birthday to my sister-in-law, Josie Elder. She is 19 years old today. She is the weirdest, funniest girl I've ever met. So happy birthday to Josie.
She can't be any weirder than you, bro.
Okay, just real quick. Those circle cheesecakes that give you like 8 different flavors?
Yeah.
Instead of eating one slice at a time, she just ate the middle out of all 8.
That's just looking at the world differently.
No, it's
There's
not.
nothing wrong with that.
No, it's
That's
not
genius.
smart.
That's genius.
It's not smart, guys.
Yeah.
Don't feed into this.
I love
Happy birthday, Josie. We love you. Everybody else, have a good weekend. We'll see you next week.